Hi, I'm Thomas the Hermit. I am a man of prayer, a lay hermit, and you have found my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, I talk about things of prayer, and I also talk about other things that are important to me that are happening inside of the conservative Catholic world. Okay, today's video is a continuation of a series that I've already started about Teresa of Avila, the great teacher of prayer. And the topic that I'm covering today is mortal sin. Now, I myself, growing up as a person who was raised more in the understanding of the mercy of God, have a little bit of different perspective on mortal sin. But I'm not teaching my perspective, but I will share my perspective in the light of my spiritual life. But we're going to look at what Teresa of Avila says. And if she doesn't know about the interior matters that we're talking about, no one else does, because she is a doctor par excellence when it comes to the teachings about prayer and interior matters. Okay, so Teresa, this is a quote from Teresa from the Interior Castle, the First Mansion, Chapter 2. And I'll get in and talk about what the mansions and the castle are all about, but let's get started. I want to consider what will be the state of this castle when the soul falls into mortal sin. Okay, so she's talking about a castle. She talks about a castle that is like a diamond or a very pure crystal. And this castle has many, many rooms. Thousands, tens of thousands, lots of rooms, okay? At the very center of the castle is a room where the king is. The king, of course, is God, God within the soul. This is how she describes the castle. So she talks about the soul that falls into mortal sin, the state of the castle that is created. She says this very directly. Now, she says lots of different things. This is a particular quote that I pulled out that encapsulates that. There is no thicker darkness. Now, we want to talk about more than just the fact that she says there's no thicker darkness. What is the importance of her teaching about mortal sin in the second chapter of the First Mansion? Because this is a book about progressing in prayer. Now you say, well, the importance is that, when you fall into sin, you kind of mess everything up. Well, yes, of course, but she has a greater understanding. So let's listen to what she has to say. When in mortal sin, any good that you try to do brings no merit, says Teresa. This is a quote from her. In a state like this, the soul will find profit in nothing, and hence being as it is in mortal sin, none of the good works it may do will be of any avail. None of the good works that the soul does will be of any avail. Okay, so when you're in mortal sin and you go to beg God, you're praying your rosary, you're doing this, that, and the other, you're offering up your life, etc., etc., it's all a waste of time, says Teresa. The intention of a person, this is Teresa again, who commits a mortal sin is not to please him, but to give pleasure to the devil. And as the devil is darkness itself, the poor soul becomes darkness itself likewise. So she goes on to say that you're not in God anymore. You actually have become rooted in the devil. She says, this is another quote, I once heard a spiritual man say that he was not so much astonished at the things done by a soul in mortal sin as the things not done by it. I feel the same way. You know, when I have fallen into a serious grave sin, and I was in that darkness that she describes, and the fact that sin did not multiply upon sin is amazing. And I think it's because in some ways God is still trying to protect us. I think that's what's going on. I think that's why it's so amazing, you know, that things don't get worse and worse. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, when you're following the devil, things can go really, really bad fast. That's why you don't play with the devil. Things go really, really bad fast. I always say this: what does it take to kill a person, you know, if you have a gun in your hand? You know, a child can kill a full-grown man with a gun simply by pulling their finger. And that's exactly what the devil is like. In an instant, your life will change from a person who has not killed a person to a person who has killed a person in an instant. And that is exactly what it's like when you fall into the snares of the devil. So she goes on to say, any good thing that we do has its source not in ourselves, but rather in that spring where this tree, which is the soul, is planted. In other words, if you are planted in God, then the works of God will come through you. But if you're planted in the devil, the works of evil will come through you. When you fall into mortal sin, you are separated from God, and the good you try to do, this is my own thoughts off of looking at Teresa's writings, to do will have no merit because it's not rooted in God. Okay, so what Teresa is saying is something more important to us who want to advance on the way to contemplation. And this is why I say, why is this note in? Why is this section in the interior castle? It's because she wants to specify that when you're in a state of grace, the work that you do produces merit. But when you're in the state of mortal sin, whatever you do produces it does not advance you on the way. So if we get it into our heads early on to do what we have to do about serious sin in our lives, then we will not have a huge impediment that is keeping us from great spiritual growth, okay? The examination of conscience becomes important then, you know? Have I committed a mortal sin? You know, of course, if we commit a mortal sin, we're not supposed to be allowed to the table of the Lord. But the church has given us a remedy for that. Now, people think going to confession is a negative thing. I love going to confession, okay? When I'm in that darkness, when I have fallen into sin, I like to get rid of it as soon as I can. I'll be in a church, and if I see a priest, I'll grab him and say, Father, can you hear my confession? You know? I go to confession on a regular basis. I would say, you know, at least 4 times a month. Probably every week I go to confession. And that doesn't mean that I'm in serious sin, you know. Sometimes I am in serious sin, okay? And boy, I want to get that monkey off my back as fast as I can because it clouds everything, okay? It really kind of messes up that relationship with God. I can't see him as clearly. I don't experience him as well. I think this is what Teresa is trying to tell us. And so what the devil does is he wants to get us to fall into a serious sin so that the work that we do will not be rooted in God. And this is what she is teaching us. Now, the next video that I'm going to make will be about self-knowledge, okay? So the first self-knowledge that we're looking at is about sin, avoiding it, etc., etc. Now, I'm not telling you to be a nutcase when it comes to sin. We have to be humble about who we are. The fact is that we're not as good as we think we are, and we fall into sin, and we have issues, and we have problems. Now, I'm not advocating that we go and sin. Okay? What I'm saying is we have to be humble about who we really are, and that's where self-knowledge comes in. So I'm going to be looking next week at self-knowledge, what Teresa has to say about self-knowledge, its importance on the pathway and in our growth in prayer and spiritual life. This is Thomas the Hermit. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you. I'll talk to you later.